All right, let's get into it. You know, when we think about what really moves the economy, our minds usually jump to the big stuff, right? Stock market drama, huge government spending packages, Federal Reserve rate hikes. But today, we're going to talk about a much quieter force, something that, it turns out, might just be the economy's secret weapon, the good old-fashioned dividend.
And to kick things off, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're dealing with. In 2023 alone, public companies all around the world paid out this much money in dividends. That's $1.7 trillion.
And just to give you an idea of how massive that is, this river of cash was actually bigger than the total value of all the new corporate bonds issued in the US that entire year. It is one of the single biggest streams of money flowing directly into investors' hands. And yet, for some reason, we tend to overlook it.
And that really brings us to the big question for today. What if this steady, almost boring drip, drip, drip of cash is way more than just a return on an investment? What if it's actually a kind of built-in stabilizer for the whole financial system?
Well, that idea right there, it actually creates a huge puzzle for economists. Because if you look at the classic financial textbooks, the way companies pay out these enormous sums, well, it makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, this is where we hit a massive gap between theory and what happens in the real world. The classic theory, from Miller and Modigliani, basically says dividends are irrelevant. If you want cash, hey, just sell a few of your shares. But in reality, companies and investors are obsessed with them, especially with keeping those payments steady. This huge contradiction is what's known in finance as the dividend puzzle.
And the key to unlocking this whole puzzle is this concept of a sticky dividend. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Companies will fight tooth and nail to avoid cutting their dividend, even when their profits take a nosedive. Why? Because they know their investors value that consistency above almost anything else, but why do they value it so much?
So, to solve this puzzle, some new research from Reed Douglas did something really simple, but honestly incredibly powerful. It just followed the money. And it turns out the answer is all about the behavior of the biggest players in the market. We're talking large institutional investors. Think pension funds, big banks, and insurance companies.
So by digging through a massive data set of portfolios, the research found that these big investors are anything but passive. They actively lean into stocks that pay dividends. But here's the really crucial part. They're actually pretty slow to react when a company increases its dividend. And that little behavioral quirk, that lack of a big immediate reward for raising the payout, combined with their hunger for stability, it creates this powerful incentive for companies to just, keep the payments steady.
And when you piece all of that behavior together, something pretty amazing happens. The whole purpose of a dividend completely transforms. It stops being just a simple cash payout and starts acting like something much, much smarter, an economic insurance policy.
The research paper itself puts it perfectly. Instead of looking at these sticky dividends as some kind of weird, inefficient habit, we should see them as a contract, a kind of unspoken agreement between a company and its major investors.
So, how does this insurance actually work? Well, it's a pretty simple two-step deal. First, in the good times, companies hold on to a little extra cash instead of jacking up their dividends. That's the premium investors pay. Then, when a recession hits and other income streams start to dry up, the company dips into those reserves to keep the dividend checks coming. That's the payout.
And when you actually crunch the numbers, the trade-off here is just incredible. The model estimates that the premium investors pay is tiny, like a dip of just 0.68% in payouts during normal times. But the benefit? Wow. During a recession, that insurance pays out with a staggering 10.28% boost to payouts. It is a tiny, tiny cost for a massive benefit, right when you need it the most.
And look, this isn't just some neat theory on a spreadsheet. This insurance has a real, tangible, and frankly, enormous impact on the entire economy when things get tough.
So what does that 10% boost actually look like in cold hard cash? The research estimates that in a recession, this insurance effect delivers the equivalent of a $15 billion stimulus payment straight to investors.
I mean, just think about what that means. This effectively becomes a form of automatic, private sector stimulus. It doesn't need a vote in Congress, it doesn't need a debate, it's just built right into the financial system, quietly pumping cash into the economy and helping families and funds keep spending even when wages might be falling. It literally helps smooth out the roughest edges of a recession.
So we've basically come full circle. That old dividend puzzle, the one that made sticky dividends look like some kind of inefficient, backward corporate habit, it's solved. It's not a flaw in the system, it's a feature.
It's a powerful, built-in mechanism that actually makes the entire financial system more stable.
So the next time you hear someone talking about corporate dividends, don't just tune it out as a simple check in the mail. Maybe ask yourself this: could this quiet, predictable, and let's be honest, kind of boring part of investing, could it actually be one of the most important tools we have for keeping the economy steady when it matters most?